It was a sound that shattered the stillness of the woods. A scream. Not human, not animal, but something else entirely. Something that didn't belong in this world. It came from the trees behind my house, deep in the darkness where no one dares to tread. I stood frozen on my back porch, my breath fogging in the icy night air, feeling eyes on me, unseen, unblinking, heavy with intent. Something was out there, watching, waiting, its presence pressing down on me like a storm about to break. I didn't know it then, but that scream was the beginning of everything, the moment I stepped into her trap. My name's Ethan, and I'm not okay. I haven't been since my mom died last year. It's not just grief, it's this pressure, like claws digging into my chest, a storm of rage and guilt that won't let go. I tried therapy, thinking it would fix me, that I could finally breathe again. But Dr. Melanie wasn't a doctor. She wasn't even human. What she did to me, to all of us, still haunts me, waking me in the night with whispers I can't escape. I'm telling this story because I need someone to believe me, because I'm terrified she's not gone, and I can feel her watching me even now, her presence lingering in the scars she left behind. I grew up in a small town outside Seattle, where the forests stretch endlessly, swallowing sound and light like a living thing. The woods behind my house are dense, a maze of towering pines and tangled underbrush, the kind of place where you can get lost and never be found. My friends think I'm the chill guy, always calm, always fine, the one who's got it together. They don't know about the weight I carry, the emptiness that started when Mom passed and grew into something worse, something alive. Mom died in a car accident, sudden and senseless, on her way to pick me up from college. I was waiting at the bus stop, texting her to drive safe, when I got the call. A drunk driver, they said, T-boned her at an intersection. She was gone before the paramedics arrived. I keep replaying that day, wondering if I'd taken an earlier bus, if I'd told her not to come, would she still be here? The guilt eats at me, a constant ache that turned into a storm inside me, building, never breaking, always threatening to spill over. I couldn't talk to anyone about it. My buddy Jake lost his kid to cancer last year. How could I dump my problems on him? Online forums felt too cold, too exposed, like I was shouting into a void. My dad and I had been fighting since the funeral, small arguments that turned into shouting matches over nothing, dishes in the sink, bills left unpaid, the way I'd leave the TV on when I wasn't watching. It was never about those things, though. It was about Mom, about the hole she left that neither of us knew how to fill. So I found my own way to cope. I screamed. There's a clearing in the woods, a mile from my house, where the trees form a perfect circle, their branches arching overhead like a cathedral of shadows. No one goes there, not hikers, not hunters, not even kids on dares. It's just me, the silence, and the darkness. At night, I'd walk out, the crunch of leaves under my boots, the only sound, my flashlight beam cutting through the gloom. I'd stand in the center, the air cold against my skin, and scream until my throat was raw, until my lungs burned, until I felt like I'd purged the poison inside me. It was like vomiting up the pain, the guilt, the grief, a release that left me hollow but lighter. But it was never enough. The pressure always came back, heavier, hungrier, like a beast clawing at my ribs, begging to be let out. One night, after another fight with Dad, he'd yelled at me for forgetting to take out the trash, but it was really about Mom. I went to the clearing. The air was sharp, the trees whispering in the wind like they were alive, their branches creaking like old bones. I stood in the center, my hands clenched into fists, and screamed louder than ever, my voice echoing off the pines, a raw, desperate sound that seemed to shake the earth. Then I heard it, an echo that wasn't mine. It was deeper, guttural, like a growl from something massive, something ancient, its resonance vibrating in my chest. I stopped, heart pounding, scanning the darkness, my flashlight beam trembling in my hand. The trees were still, but the air felt wrong, heavy, like it was pressing down on me, watching me, waiting for me to move. I took a step back, my boots crunching on twigs, and that's when I saw it. Eyes, yellow and glowing, floating in the shadows between the trees. They weren't human, weren't animal. They were too low to the ground, too wide apart, and they moved, gliding closer, silent as death. I caught a glimpse of a shape, long, sinewy, with a body that seemed to shimmer like oil, covered in jagged teeth that glinted in the moonlight. Its limbs were too long, too thin, bending at angles that shouldn't be possible, like a spider, but worse, so much worse. It whispered, a voice like nails on glass, a voice that seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere. More mouths. I turned and ran, my screams echoing behind me, my heart hammering as the woods seemed to close in, branches clawing at my jacket, roots tripping my feet. I didn't stop until I was back in my house, doors locked, lights on, shaking in my room, the thing's voice echoing in my mind. More mouths. She knew I needed help. I couldn't keep going like this, screaming in the woods, hearing things that shouldn't exist, seeing things that couldn't be real. I found Dr. Melanie's website online, a bare bones page with a form and an address in a rundown strip mall an hour away, the kind of place you'd drive past without a second glance. Her office was wedged between a shuttered vape shop and a pawn store, its faded sign barely readable in the dim streetlight. The waiting room was too big, with cracked linoleum, peeling wallpaper, and a fluorescent light that buzzed like a dying insect, casting flickering shadows on the walls. It smelled of mildew and something sweeter, almost sickly, like rotting flowers, the kind of scent that clings to your clothes. I almost left, my hand on the door, but I was too desperate to turn back. Dr. Melanie was tall, unnaturally thin, with skin so pale it looked like porcelain, smooth and cold, like she'd never seen the sun. Her eyes were too bright, like they caught the light wrong, glowing faintly in the dim room, a pale blue that seemed to pierce through me. Her voice was soft but sharp, like a blade wrapped in silk, each word precise, deliberate. I misheard her name at first, thought it was Melanie, but it was something else, Malapanie or Malepanie, with a P that didn't fit, a name that felt wrong on my tongue. She didn't correct me, just smiled and said, "Melanie's fine." That smile made my skin crawl, like she could see right through me, like she knew things about me I didn't even know myself. But I stayed. I sat across from her, the chair creaking under my weight, and told her everything about the sadness, the pressure, the screaming in the woods. I even told her about the thing I'd heard, the growl, though I left out the eyes. I didn't want her to think I was crazy, to send me to a psych ward. I expected her to laugh, to tell me I was overreacting, to prescribe some pills and send me on my way. Instead, she leaned forward, her eyes glinting like a cat's, her hands folded in her lap, nails long and sharp. "You mourn," she said, her voice almost a purr, a sound that sent a shiver down my spine. "That's natural. But your screams, they're not enough, are they?" "No," I admitted, my voice barely a whisper, my hands clenched in my lap. "It's like I need to scream louder, or more." She nodded, her smile widening, showing too many teeth, teeth that seemed too sharp, too perfect. "You only have one mouth, Ethan," she said, her voice dropping, layered, like a choir of whispers speaking at once. "More mouths would help." I laughed, a nervous, shaky sound, thinking it was a metaphor, maybe some weird therapy technique I didn't understand. But her expression didn't change. She just watched me, unblinking, her eyes glowing brighter, like embers in the dark, and I felt a chill settle in my bones. I left the session feeling unsettled, her words looping in my head. More mouths would help. I couldn't stop thinking about them, like they were a command I didn't understand yet, a puzzle I was meant to solve. That night, I went back to the clearing. I didn't want to, but the pressure was unbearable, a storm that wouldn't break, and Melanie's words wouldn't leave me alone. The woods were darker, the air colder, like the forest was holding its breath, waiting for me to make a move. I stood in the center, my hands shaking, my flashlight beam cutting through the darkness, illuminating the circle of trees around me. I screamed, the sound raw and desperate, but it felt hollow, pointless, the pressure still clawing at me, heavier than ever. Then I remembered Melanie's words, and I couldn't shake them, couldn't push them away. I pulled out my pocket knife, the one I kept for camping, its blade glinting in the moonlight, sharp and cold against my fingers. My hands shook as I rolled up my sleeve, staring at my forearm, the skin pale and unmarked. It was crazy, but I needed to try something. Anything. I pressed the blade to my skin, near my elbow, and cut a small line, just deep enough to break the skin. The pain was sharp, a burning sting that made me hiss, but I kept going, dragging the knife in a shallow arc, my hands trembling. When I pulled the knife away, there was almost no blood, just a thin trickle that stopped almost immediately. Instead, something white glistened in the wound, catching the moonlight. I leaned closer, heart racing, my breath fogging in the cold, my flashlight shaking in my other hand. It wasn't bone, it was teeth. 4 small, perfect teeth, nestled in pink flesh, their edges sharp and gleaming. The wound gaped, revealing a tongue that twitched like it was alive. A small, wet thing that moved on its own. It was a mouth. I should have screamed, should have run, should have thrown the knife away and never come back. But I didn't. It felt right. Like this was what I'd been missing, what the pressure had been begging for, what the storm inside me needed. I took a deep breath, feeling the air rush through my throat and my arm, a strange, dual sensation that sent a shiver through me. Then I screamed. The sound was different, louder, fuller, like 2 voices harmonizing in a haunting melody, a chorus of anguish that echoed through the clearing. The pressure in my chest eased, just a little, like a valve releasing steam, and for the first time in months, I felt a flicker of relief, a moment of peace. I covered the mouth with my sleeve, the fabric sticking to the wound, and stumbled home, my mind spinning, my heart pounding. What was I becoming? And why did it feel so good, so right, like I was finally whole? The next few weeks were a haze, a blur of screaming and cutting, a descent I couldn't stop. I went back to Melanie's office, session after session, each one stranger than the last, each one pulling me deeper into her web. She'd ask the same questions, her voice hypnotic, wrapping around my thoughts like a fog. Do you mourn? Are your screams enough? I told her about the mouth, expecting her to call me insane, to send me to a hospital, to tell me I needed help. Instead, she smiled, her eyes glowing faintly, like embers in the dark, a pale blue that seemed to burn. You're learning, Ethan, she said, her voice layered, like a choir of whispers, each word sinking into my mind like a hook. You need more. I don't know why I listened to her, why I didn't run. Maybe it was her voice, so calm, so certain, a lullaby that dulled my fear. Maybe it was the relief I felt when I screamed with my new mouth, the way the pressure lessened each time, the way it made me feel alive. I started cutting again, always in the clearing, always at night, the moonlight my only witness. A mouth on my other arm, the teeth sharper this time, the tongue longer, curling against my skin. One on my thigh, its whispers louder, more insistent, speaking words I couldn't understand. One on my shoulder, its voice raspy, like it had been screaming for years, a sound that made my skin crawl. Each time the teeth appeared, the tongues moved, and the screams grew stronger, a chorus of anguish that felt like it was purging the storm inside me, draining the poison from my soul. But something was wrong, something I couldn't ignore. The mouths started moving on their own, whispering in voices I didn't recognize, soft, hissing words that sounded like a language I'd never heard, like they were talking to each other, plotting something in the dark. Sometimes they'd scream without me, short, sharp bursts that woke me in the night, my sheets soaked in sweat, my heart pounding as I listened to their voices. Join us. Join us. My memories of the sessions were blurry, like they were being erased, like Melanie was reaching into my mind and twisting it. I'd set reminders on my phone, but I couldn't remember booking 14 appointments, couldn't remember what we'd talked about. I found recordings I'd made to capture Melanie's advice, but they were wrong. Some were just my voice, with long silences where she should have been speaking, the air filled with static. In one, I heard her say, "You need more mouths." But her voice was layered, like a dozen Melanies speaking at once, their tones overlapping in a way that made my head ache, made my scars burn. I started noticing the other patients in the waiting room, their faces pale, their movements jerky, like they were marionettes on broken strings. A woman with wet sleeves, always dabbing at her eyes, her hands trembling, her nails bitten to the quick. A man with scarred hands, muttering about the choir, his eyes darting like he was being watched, his fingers twitching like they wanted to claw at something. They looked haunted, like me, their faces etched with fear, their bodies marked by something unnatural. One day, I saw the woman's arm. Her sleeve was rolled up, revealing eyes on her skin, blinking and weeping, tears dripping onto the floor, pooling around her feet like a puddle of grief. The man showed me his hand once, and his fingertips weren't nails. They were tiny, chattering teeth, snapping at the air, their edges stained with blood. I looked away, my stomach twisting, bile rising in my throat, the sickly, sweet smell of the room overwhelming me. What was Melanie doing to us? What had she done to me? I couldn't stop going to the sessions, even though I knew I should. It was like Melanie had a hold on me, her voice echoing in my dreams, her eyes burning behind my lids, a pale blue that followed me everywhere. Each session, she pushed me further, her words sinking into my mind like hooks, her presence growing stronger, more oppressive. "You're almost ready, Ethan," she'd say, her smile too wide, her teeth too sharp, her eyes glowing brighter, casting shadows on the walls. "The choir needs you." I didn't know what she meant, but I felt it. The mouths on my body were eager, hungry, like they were waiting for something, like they were part of something bigger. One night, I went to the clearing, the pressure unbearable, my scars itching like they were alive, burning under my clothes. I was about to scream when I heard rustling in the trees, the same heavy air I'd felt before, the same sense of being watched. Then I saw it again, those yellow eyes, glowing in the darkness, closer this time, brighter, more intense. The shape moved, low to the ground, its body a mass of writhing shadows and teeth, hundreds of them, glinting like broken glass, their edges sharp and jagged. Its limbs were too long, too thin, bending at angles that shouldn't be possible, like a spider. But worse, its movements jerky, unnatural. It whispered, in a voice like Melanie's, but worse, a chorus of agony that seemed to come from the earth itself. More mouths. Join us. I ran, the mouths on my body screaming without my control, their voices blending with the thing's growl, a cacophony that filled the woods. Branches scratched at my face, my boots slipping on wet leaves, my flashlight beam bouncing wildly as I fled. I could hear it behind me, its teeth snapping, its whispers growing louder. Join us. Join us. I didn't stop until I was back in my house, doors locked, lights on, shaking in my room, my clothes torn, my hands scratched and bleeding. I sat against the wall, my knees to my chest, trying to breathe, but the mouths kept whispering, their voices overlapping, a chorus that wouldn't stop. Join us. Join us. I didn't sleep that night. The thing's eyes burned into my memory, its voice echoing in my scars, a promise of something I couldn't escape. Pronto session was marked on my phone. Final therapy. I almost didn't go. The recordings, the mouths, the thing in the woods, it was too much, too real, too terrifying. But I thought about the other patients, the woman with crying eyes, the man with toothed fingers, the way they looked at me, their eyes pleading for help. If Melanie was hurting them, I had to stop her. I drove to the strip mall, the streets empty, the air thick with fog, like the world was holding its breath, waiting for something to happen. As I approached her office, I heard it, a cacophony of screams, sobs, and murmurs, like a choir of agony, the sound seeping through the walls, filling the night with pain. My mouths twitched under my clothes, eager to join in, their whispers growing louder, more insistent. It's time. I pushed open the door and froze, my breath catching in my throat, my heart pounding so hard I thought it would burst. The waiting room was packed, dozens of people, all changed, all broken, all transformed into something unnatural. Mouths on their arms, necks, faces, screaming in unison, their voices a symphony of torment. Eyes weeping on their skin, tears pooling on the floor, the linoleum slick with grief. One woman's hair moved, revealing tiny teeth snapping in her scalp, her hands clawing at her face, blood dripping down her cheeks. A man's chest gaped open, a mouth the size of a fist screaming silently, blood dripping from its jagged teeth, staining his shirt red. Another patient, a young girl, had eyes on her palms, staring at me, unblinking, as she sobbed, her small body trembling. They were all crying, muttering or screaming, their voices weaving into a melody that felt alive, hungry, a song of pain that pulsed through the room. At the center, on the receptionist's desk, stood Melanie. Her dress was loose, hanging off her frame like a shroud, her eyes glowing like twin moons, casting an eerie light across the room, illuminating the horror around her. The receptionist lay slumped at her feet, her throat slit, blood pooling on the floor, her eyes wide and empty, her hand still clutching a pen like she'd been writing when Melanie attacked. Melanie didn't seem to notice, her gaze fixed on me, her smile sharp as a blade, her teeth glinting in the flickering light. "You came to me," she said, her voice soft but piercing, like it was inside my skull, echoing in my bones. "Do you mourn?" I tried to shout. "What are you?" But my mouths betrayed me, their voices speaking for me, a chorus of anguish I couldn't control. "I mourn," they said, all at once, their voices echoing in the room, joining the choir, blending with the screams around me. "I think you have enough mouths now," she said, her smile widening, her eyes burning brighter, the light casting shadows that seemed to move on their own. The pressure in my chest exploded, a dam breaking, a storm unleashed. My mouths opened, and I screamed, a sound so loud it shook the walls, a raw, primal howl that tore through me, ripping me apart. The other patients joined in, their voices blending into a melody that was beautiful and horrifying, like we were instruments in her orchestra, a symphony of pain conducted by her will. The woman with crying eyes wailed, tears streaming from her arms, pooling around her feet, her sobs a high-pitched keening that cut through the chaos. The man with toothed fingers clawed at his face, screaming through his chest, blood dripping from his wounds, staining the floor red. The girl with eyes on her palms stared at me, her sobs a desperate plea, her small hands trembling as she reached for me. The room pulsed with sound, with pain, with her, the air thick with the scent of blood and fear. Then Melanie did something I'll never forget, something that still haunts my nightmares. She dug her fingers into her abdomen, tearing her dress and her skin apart like it was paper, her movements slow, deliberate, almost graceful. There was no blood, no flesh, just a blinding light pouring from the wound, like a star being born, its glow searing my eyes, burning my scars. The light grew brighter, consuming the room, swallowing the screams, the melody collapsing into a void of silence. The light pulsed, each wave hotter than the last, and I felt my scars burn, felt the mouths on my body scream one last time before going silent. I collapsed, my vision fading, the light burning through me, and the last thing I saw was Melanie's smile, her eyes glowing, her voice a whisper in the dark. Join us. When I woke, Melanie was gone. The patients were scattered, some lying on the floor, others stumbling out the door, their faces pale, their eyes hollow, their bodies trembling. The mouths on my body were gone, replaced by faint, puckered scars that burned when I touched them, a lingering heat that wouldn't fade. The woman with crying eyes, now just a normal woman, her arms unmarked, stood by the desk, holding the receptionist's laptop, her hand steady despite the chaos, her face calm. Too calm, like she'd seen this before, like she knew what came next. "We need to leave," she said, her voice steady, cutting through the ringing in my ears, the silence left by the screams. "Take the laptop, wipe it, don't contact anyone." I tried to argue, my throat raw, my voice a rasp, barely audible. "But she's not human," the woman snapped, her eyes hard, her voice sharp, like a blade. "You saw her. We can't find her. Go." I grabbed the laptop, my hands shaking, the weight of it heavy in my arms, like it was a bomb waiting to go off. The man with scarred hands was wiping blood off his arms with a cardigan, his fingers stained red, his eyes wild with panic. He'd been holding the receptionist's head when I came in, his hands cradling her like a child, her blood staining his clothes. I didn't ask if she was alive. Her empty gaze, her slit throat, the way her body lay limp against the desk, told me everything. The girl with eyes on her palms was gone, but I saw her shoes near the door, small and blood-stained, like she'd run without them, her bare feet leaving prints in the blood on the floor. The woman with crying eyes took charge, directing the others like a general, her voice calm but firm. "Delete your contact info. Don't talk to the police. Act normal." She looked at me, her expression unreadable, her eyes cold. "You. Take the laptop. Destroy it. If you try to find her, you'll regret it." I nodded, too shaken to argue, my mind a fog of fear and confusion. I drove home, the laptop on the passenger seat, its presence a constant reminder of what I'd seen, what I'd survived. That night, I wiped it clean, reformatted the drive, and smashed it with a hammer in my garage, the sound of shattering plastic echoing in the silence, a hollow sound that matched the emptiness inside me. I buried the pieces in the backyard, my hands trembling, dirt caking under my nails, the cold earth swallowing the evidence. I kept my routine normal: work, friends, grocery runs, forcing smiles that didn't reach my eyes, pretending I was fine. No one came for me. The news mentioned a body found in a strip mall. No suspects, no leads, just a brief segment that disappeared from the headlines the next day. Melanie's website was gone, the domain dead, like it had never existed. The recordings on my phone were useless. Just my voice. No trace of her. The silences where she'd spoken, now filled with static. A faint whisper that sounded like her name. Melapone. But it wasn't over. The pressure came back, worse than ever. A living thing now, clawing at my ribs, whispering through my scars. A storm that wouldn't break. I couldn't go to the clearing anymore. The woods felt alive, watching me. The air heavy with the thing's presence, its yellow eyes haunting my dreams. Sometimes I'd wake in the night, my scars burning, and I'd swear I heard her voice, Melanie's voice, whispering through the walls. More mouths. Sometimes I'd look out my window and see shadows moving in the trees, shapes that weren't human, weren't animal, their eyes glowing yellow in the moonlight. A week later, I went back to the strip mall. I don't know why. Maybe I needed answers. Maybe I was losing it. Maybe I just needed to know it was real. The office was empty, the windows boarded up, the air thick with dust, the sickly sweet smell still lingering, faint but unmistakable. But I swear I saw her. Melanie, standing in the shadows of the alley beside the building, her eyes glowing, her smile too wide, her teeth glinting in the dim light. I blinked, and she was gone. But my scars burned, like they remembered her, like they were calling to her, a heat that spread through me, a warning I couldn't ignore. I found something on the ground, a scrap of paper, yellowed and torn, with one word in her handwriting. Scream. I ran, my heart pounding, the word echoing in my mind, a command I couldn't escape. When I got home, I locked the doors, drew the curtains, and sat in the dark, the paper crumpled in my fist, my scars burning, my breath coming in short, ragged gasps. The pressure was unbearable now, a storm that wouldn't break, and I knew I couldn't scream, not anymore. But the scars wanted to. They itched. They burned. They whispered her name. Melapone. Melapone. Something not human. A name that felt like a curse. I tried to move on, to forget, but I couldn't. I started digging, looking for answers, anything to make sense of what had happened. I drove to the library, searching old records for the strip mall, for any mention of Melanie or Melapone, my hands shaking as I flipped through yellowed pages. I found nothing. No lease, no business listing, no trace of her, like she'd never existed. But I did find an article, buried in a local paper from 10 years ago, about a therapist's office in that same strip mall. It had closed after a patient went missing, last seen leaving a session, her car found abandoned in the parking lot. The therapist's name wasn't listed, but the description matched. Tall, pale, with eyes that seemed to glow. The article ended with a quote from the patient's mother. She said she heard voices, telling her to scream. She said they wouldn't stop. I stopped sleeping after that, the pressure building, my scars itching like they were alive, burning under my skin. I started having nightmares, not just of Melanie, but of the clearing, the thing with yellow eyes waiting for me, its teeth glinting in the moonlight, its body a mass of shadows and teeth. In one dream, I went to the clearing, and the thing was there, its limbs long and thin, its movements jerky, unnatural. It opened its mouth, and Melanie's face emerged, her eyes glowing, her voice whispering, "Join us." I woke up screaming, my scars burning, my sheets soaked in sweat, the pressure in my chest a living thing, clawing to get out. Then, 2 weeks ago, I found another scar on my chest, one I didn't make. It's small, barely an inch long, but it's growing, stretching across my skin, and I swear I felt it move, like something inside is trying to get out, like a mouth waiting to be born. Last night, as I was writing this, I heard it. A whisper, soft and hissing, coming from the scar. Scream. I froze, my heart pounding, the pressure in my chest unbearable, a storm that won't break. I didn't scream, but I wanted to, and I'm terrified that if I do, she'll find me, that she'll come for me, that she'll finish what she'd started. I found this community online, a place where people share stories like mine, where the impossible feels real. I don't know if you'll believe me, but I had to tell someone, had to get this out before it consumes me. Every night I hear whispers from my scars, calling her name. Malapni, Malepni, something not human, something ancient, something hungry. The scar on my chest is bigger now, and I can feel it breathing, its whispers growing louder, more insistent, a voice that won't let me go. I don't know how much longer I can hold out, how much longer I can keep the storm inside me, how much longer I can fight her. If you're out there listening, don't go to therapy in a strip mall. Don't trust a doctor who knows too much about your pain, who looks at you like she can see your soul. And whatever you do, don't scream in the woods, because something might scream back, and it might not let you go. If you've ever heard a voice in the darkness whispering your name, telling you to scream, please, tell me I'm not alone. Tell me you've felt it too, that you've heard the whispers, that you know what it's like to be hunted by something you can't escape.